Hello, everyone, and welcome to Asian Pacific Voices Radio, where you'll find stimulating conversations that explore diverse topics and stories that impact our Asian Pacific American communities. I'm your host, Rasha Goel. Today, we are so excited to be joined by a globe-trotting journalist, best-selling author, and former rock star who's never been afraid to challenge the status quo. Based in Los Angeles, California, my guest has written for major outlets, including the New York Times, Rolling Stone, New York Magazine, Glamour, and Vice. She first made waves as the lead singer of the all-girl band Nylon Pink, earning passport stamps while touring stages in Asia and beyond. And today, she channels her love for travel, storytelling, and bold self-expression into her writing. She is followed by many and loved by many. It is my pleasure to welcome Kaila Yu on Asian Pacific Voices Radio. Kaila, thanks for being here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You know, you have lived so many creative lives: rock star, journalist, entrepreneur, creator. So let's talk about how your identity as an Asian American woman has shaped your journey across all these different spaces.
Yeah, it's been a pretty random career where a bunch of things just happened by accident. But yeah, I think growing up, I was very influenced by really the dearth of Asian American role models on TV. The few ones that I ended up looking up to and like resonating with were very sexy. So I think when I was in my youth and my like teens and 20s, I kind of chased that aesthetic. And then after pursuing that in the import car show scene for a while, I felt like I wanted to prove I had more than just sexiness to offer. So then I wanted to pursue a music career to kind of like legitimize myself. Um, and yeah, through that, I ended up getting into journalism after music ended because I had no backup plan, and that was kind of what came about because we started blogging. A long story there. But anyways, yeah, I've now like really shifted to a career where my looks and sexuality are not a factor. And I'm so grateful for that because that's just such a touchy place to be. Yeah.
And you know, thank you for mentioning that, because I think still as women too, right? Especially as we're growing up and going through young adulthood, these are factors that impact us. Who you had mentioned that you did have some role models. Who, if you don't mind sharing, who were some of those?
So when I was in high school, I don't think there was any like Asian role model I really looked up to. Lucy Liu hadn't yet come out. And I can't even remember who else was around when I was in high school. Um, there were certainly very few to pick from. And so I resonated with Sung Hee Lee, who is
Mm.
an Asian American Playboy model. And she was very huge back then on the internet, amongst the boys, obviously. And I was very nerdy and, you know, not asked to dances and stuff like that. So she just seemed the epitome of like the Pamela Anderson of Asians. And because of that, because she was like the only role model, I really
Yeah.
latched onto that as what I wanted to pursue.
You know, it's funny you mentioned that. Same thing. I was your nerdy Indian girl in high school. And I think for me, looking at Bollywood and some of these actresses who were sexy and stunning, because again, looking in Hollywood, there wasn't really also an Indian woman that I could kind of look up to for the brain and beauty, right? I mean, there weren't even that many Indian women in general in the industry. What I'm so excited about and fascinated about is your upcoming memoir, Fetishized. You talk about hypersexualization of Asian women in the media. Could you talk a little bit about what inspired you to write this book, and what do you hope that readers take away from it? Because I do find this isn't a topic that we're still openly talking about, right? It's a mention
Yeah.
that comes up.
It's crazy because everyone knows about the fetishization of Asian women. When I bring it up to even white people, they're like, oh, yeah, I know a guy, you know, because everybody has heard of it. And there's been, you know, articles written about it, but just not really a first person account of like how it's like I really fetishized myself because I was playing into like during the 2000s, which Ariel Levy, I think her name is, she wrote this book called um, Female Chauvinist Pigs. And it's about how women in the 2000s thought that sexuality was empowerment. And we celebrated
Mm.
Playboy Girls Next Door, which is like a troubling TV show if you think about it, was like, oh, this is so cute and wholesome is how they presented it. But it's actually really gross if
No.
you think about what's happening there. But we celebrated that. We celebrated men's magazines, FHM, Maxim were huge. So it was also, my life was taking place amongst this. And I saw Asian fetishization as somewhat empowering because when I was in high school and junior high, I was totally ignored. So it's like, oh, well, at least we're being seen, you know?
Yeah.
Um, and then after I finished that career, I didn't think about it too much, but it was only during the pandemic that I started posting TikTok videos because I had nothing else to do. And then some videos about the 2000s started taking off, where first of all, everyone was just nostalgic about the Asian American experience during that time because that's also not that talked about. Um, but then, so I started posting on that topic and reflecting on that time in my life. And then the Atlanta spa shootings happened. So then we were all very shocked by that. And then I really started thinking about like, oh, how did I contribute to this like fetishization of Asian women? Because I played my part too. Um, and then I wrote an article for Newsweek that kind of got some attention and just kind of inspired a book idea ultimately. It was all kind of accidental. Yeah, accidental.
Wow. And you recently also, I think, shared the cover of it. Yes, I saw that on your
Yeah.
Instagram.
It's so funny because it's not like, a memoir. Some people think it's like a memoir about like, oh, my fun times in the 2000s. So since it was it's not just a memoir, it's a cultural criticism. So
Hmm.
my editor wrote it a lot I wrote the book, but she edited it heavily with me. So I consider it a team project. But it goes over like memoirs of a geisha. There's a chapter analyzing that and how that affected me, the Harajuku girls, the Fast and Furious, and other mean girls. Yeah, there were a lot of problematic representations, and they probably affected everyone quite a bit. So I actually did not want my face on the cover of the book because I thought it made it like less serious or whatever. But so they sent me the covers, the three options, two without my face on it, and this one they still stuck it in even though I said no, and it just like it was so strong, the design. So it was like, yeah, we'll go with
I
this
love
one.
it. It's very I don't know, to me I thought fierce when I first saw it. Just the coloring and way the image is captured. So I'm really excited for you. I'm curious to know, Kyla, how did your confidence change over time, especially as you made this transition through the different careers and just even realizing things about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I've had a really um big journey in that department. I would say in my 20s, when I was pursuing modeling and acting, I had almost zero confidence. I actually and I detail this in the book, I was just so insecure. And then that's an industry where you're competing literally against women all the time who are way more beautiful and way more talented and getting rejected every day. So I wouldn't even want to return to my 20s and how I was feeling back then. So I kind of turned to drugs and alcohol to kind of I don't know the word, but kind of just
Alleviate that, right?
alleviate and then
Because
like try to,
it's not a
yeah.
fun time. It's
No, yeah, the
heartbreaking.
20s is not fun actually. And so that went on for like maybe a decade or more, and I ultimately got sober. So then I started going to therapy and like finding spirituality. And now I feel like much more confident and happy than I've ever felt in my 20s. I never want
Oh.
to go back there.
I love that. Well, you're talking to a person who meditates every day and is a
Okay, yeah.
Reiki healer, so I
Okay.
get you. And it's so funny. As you were talking, you brought back a memory for me. I remember at that. Okay, so this might date me to everybody who's listening, but Macy's used to in Texas be called Foley's, and they had a fashion show, and I was the only Indian person there. And I never forgot the feeling because it was so cute. My parents went, but I was the only brown person. And I just kept looking at all these young white girls and how pretty they were. My skin wasn't perfect and I wasn't feeling comfortable in my body at that time. And it's such an interesting time period to go through where you can almost feel less than of
Yeah.
who you are when you really shouldn't be. And we should be celebrating because women like you and I come from such beautiful cultures and we get to kind of share the best of both worlds, right? But no
Definitely.
one's
Yeah.
there to share that with you at that time. So,
No, not at all.
okay, so let's go back to Nylon Pink real quick. So you were touring internationally with them, and then you ended up writing for reputed publications, top publications like the New York Times and Rolling Stone. But was there a particular moment where you became more aware of how other Asian American women were being portrayed or misrepresented in mainstream America? Or did that come long before that?
I think I was always aware of it. I think we're all aware of it, right? But I wasn't like actively doing anything except maybe like, oh, speaking out here and there on social media. So yeah, it's something we could speak about it more. I think that since then there's been such huge, massive, exponential positive changes
Yeah.
and representations. So yeah, I guess I was aware and just not making as much of a movement to speak about it as now.
I well, and that's interesting you mentioned that because there's moments, right, where we are all aware of some things, but I feel like it's that balance of is it okay for me to speak out? Does anybody care if I speak out
Yeah.
about this? And then am I going to be blacklisted for speaking out? So there's that finding that balance of all of this. What have you enjoyed the most between music and journalism and PR and just bringing your whole Asian American perspective to it?
I think what I enjoyed most, what I discovered with music is that I actually hate touring and playing live. So
Really?
funny discovery. It's just so stressful.
Yeah.
And I just really loved because those girls are like sisters to me. The one thing I would miss about being in the band is the camaraderie and just being with my best
Mm,
friends every day. But I do not miss the music one single bit. I think I was just doing it for validation, like, oh, I'm proving that I have a talent, you know?
right.
And that's what I did when I was young. I was trying to seek validation from men, from my career, from work, from every which way I could think of.
Well, I love that you have an added talent because not all of us can sing, and some of us would have loved to add that talent skill set. Um, I want to jump back to being fetishized because I think that again we haven't been able to speak about it as much. It's still growing, so you've been very open about it, both online and in your real life. Could you talk about maybe some of the misconceptions or even some of the harmful narratives that you've had to push back against for yourself?
I guess the question I get most commonly from mostly white guys is like, what is the difference between a preference and a fetish? Um, And that one's so hard for me to answer because it's so much a case by case basis. Because I think you could have a preference for like, I like tall guys or something, but there's no sexual aspect to it and there's
Right.
no behavioral expectation, you know, where it's a fetish is if you're like, oh, I'm also expecting her to be, really sweet or like, AKA submissive. They won't say submissive, but they'll say other coded words. Or just like, yeah, she's just like doesn't argue with me as much as like other ethnicities, you know? So nobody says submissive anymore, but they say
Right.
they end up saying it. Yeah.
and and in being vocal about this, right? You're pretty vocal on in social media and you've got your brand and you speak out there. So how do you balance your vulnerability and your visibility, especially because you're constantly in the public eye and then there's the mental health issue factor, right? Making sure that you're taking care of yourself while being authentic.
Well, here's the thing. When I was in my 20s, I was so viciously bullied online. We didn't call it bullying back then. It was just like shit talking or whatever. But like people said the most horrifying things. And I go through it on the book listing what men would say to me, like wanting
Wow.
to rape me, wanting to like do specific sexual acts to me. When I list them out, it's very disturbing. But in as a result, I have a very thick, I call crocodile skin armor. Like you cannot say anything to hurt me now because I've already heard the very, very worst. But then what
Yeah.
that happened later is then I didn't have any vulnerability. So then I was too hard. So I think after that, the most recent years has been trying to bring that wall down. I think the book is an example of it because it's very laid bare, like the insecurities I was feeling. So I think maybe the book ends up being the ultimate vulnerability. My vulnerability in real life is still a work in progress because I'm still
Mm,
very like, I'm tough after all of
right.
that. Yeah.
Well, especially through what you've been through. I mean, that's not easy, and I commend you for being able to be vocal about it and be a voice and help share your experience, your thoughts. Are you nervous? Were you nervous about sharing some of this in your book, or are you nervous about how people may receive it?
Yeah, I'm very nervous. There's like still really
Because it's raw.
yes. And I we've buried the lead a bit on the most shocking parts, which I haven't mentioned, but there are parts that um are quite revealing, yeah, of stuff that has happened to me. So right now it's easy because a lot of the people who are reading it are compassionate people, I guess. But I guess I'm a little bit more
Oh.
scared when it just goes out into the world and like it lands in anyone's hands. I'll be able to deal with it, but like it will be a little scary.
Well, that's where the crocodile skin will come in handy,
Yes,
right? Because
yeah,
you're like, this is me, take it or leave it, and here's the
yeah.
story, right? Whatever. But it's interesting because I've talked to like other artists and people who are Asian American, right? I feel we do come from this community too, and you could have had a different experience, but we aren't always as vocal because
Mhm.
there's the thing of working hard, having a good reputation, doing this. Did that ever come in the back of your mind of, oh, are people going to judge me because I'm an Asian American woman speaking out on this? Or does that kind of really not even cross your thought at this point because you've been
That
vocal
doesn't
about
really
things?
cross my mind because when I was in my 20s again, everybody was already saying, so I was like a car show model. And so all the Asian Americans were like, oh, you're a slut and you're like trashy and blah, blah, blah. So I faced it for my own community. So again, it's kind of like just rolls off. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, I can understand that. What would you say, in your opinion, is there a way that we can start shifting this media landscape so that we can tell more authentic, multi-dimensional stories about women that go kind of beyond the submissive and exotic tropes, especially for Asian American women?
I think it's really just been happening organically, like with like Beef or something on
Oh
Netflix. I
yeah.
was so very much the opposite of like traditional stereotypes. And really, it's just getting more people in power positions, producers, directors, people who are like controlling what is going out there.
Yes.
And I think that is already happening. So many people are pursuing that. And also, just social media. I think why Asians have so much more representation now is, first of all, we're very good at tech and social media. And that is not determined by major networks investing money. It is purely dependent on popularity of the people.
Hmm.
So yeah.
There's a market of us. I think the consumerism, right? And people are starting to finally realize that. Kyla, for young creatives, what advice would you have for them, especially as you've been able to build your brand and following and kind of be vocal about who you are?
I would just say, and this is easier said than done, but just don't care what anybody thinks. Like it doesn't matter. I'm really against this cancel culture because like you have
Oh,
to
me
be
too.
able to experiment and speak freely. And that is definitely causing people to be like, oh, I don't want to say that because I don't want to get canceled later, you know? But like we're human, we make mistakes, we
Yes.
misspeak, and we should be able to experiment with like being vocal about scary topics.
I absolutely agree with you. I think I'm with you on that. I'm not a supporter. Obviously, be aware of what you're saying, but yes, we are human. We're bound to make mistakes, and I think that you can't just knock off someone for somebody who may have been,
Said
uneducated or
something
unaware about
20
something.
years ago, somebody who said something
Right.
20 years ago.
Oh, that girl, that drives me crazy because, I think we also have to look at the time that they were living in, what was happening. Like, then
Yeah.
you might as well throw a whole bunch of people under the bus versus just that one person, right?
Yeah.
I want to do a fun lightning round with you, but is there anything else you'd like to share with us about any other projects, or is the book kind of the main focus right now? I know you've got an upcoming thing. We're still a few months out with Margaret Cho happening at the
Oh,
Grove,
I'm so
who's one
excited
of my
about that.
favorite people, by the way.
Yes.
I've interviewed her multiple times.
Yeah, I quoted her in the book before I met her because she's very outspoken about fetishization, other issues. So I haven't met her before, and I'm very, very excited. She's just such a powerful force. So yeah, we're um, doing a signing speaking at Barnes and Noble's at the Grove on August 19th at 7 p.m. So if you're in LA, would love to see you there.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we'll mention that again to all of our viewers and listeners. And definitely if I'm in town, I would love to come drop by and say hello. She is wonderful because, I feel as an Asian American woman and a stand-up comedian and just everything, she's been through a lot. And
She
she
has been
really
through a
was,
lot, yeah.
right? She is the path maker. She helped really change the narrative and she still continues to do that. But
Yeah.
she went through a lot.
Yes, I think
She's
we
crocodile
go. Yeah,
skinned.
yeah, yeah, she definitely. She has definitely got to be very strong. I think any like Asian woman in the media or person of color is has more loopholes or
Yeah.
barriers, whatever.
There,
Yeah.
yeah, to jump, right? And it's twofold because here you're doing it with the career that you're pursuing. And then at the same time, I'm a firm believer too of just individuality, right? And that's where like your spirituality, the mindfulness or whatever kind of helps bring you back to stay grounded because you're really trying to balance both of these things more, collectively for whatever your persona is out there. And then I don't know, for myself individually of who am I
Hmm.
outside of all this stuff, right?
Totally. Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna have some fun because I know we've been talking about a couple of serious things. So this is more of a 30-second, like just whatever is top of mind. Okay. They're just quick this or that, and whatever comes to your mind. All right.
Okay.
So Kaila, Tokyo street food, K food, or LA taco truck?
Korean barbecue, my favorite. Everybody knows this about me.
Beach or mountain?
Beach. I'm a tropical girl. Also, I'm a diver. So yeah.
Ah, favorite road trip snack or comfort food?
I'm not really a road trip person, but I'll say comfort food.
Blackpink or Beyonce?
Blackpink. Yeah.
Favorite destination for soul searching?
Bora Bora.
Ooh, that's on my to-do list.
Yes.
If your memoir had a soundtrack, what would the opening track be called?
I think Milkshake by Khalees really represents that era.
I love it.
Yeah.
And where a favorite place to go diving since you just mentioned that?
Bora Bora. That's
Okay.
because, yeah. Also the Maldives. Yeah.
Oh,
The expected places are the best diving places.
two places I've not been to yet, but that are on the list. Thank you for sharing that. Where can people find you, especially learn more about what you're doing in the book that you've got coming out? Social media handles, website. Tell us all.
Yeah, it's just my name for everything. So KailaYu.com, Kaila Yu on socials. Yeah. So you can find me and say hello.
Awesome. Kaila, so happy that you could stop by and talk to us. And thank you for sharing all of this inspiring and thought-provoking dialogue and conversation with us. I think these are conversations that are important and to be had. And I'm really glad you're out there. And I know it's not always the easiest and you've had quite the journey, but you're very inspirational. And so thank you. Thank you.
Thank
I'm
you so
looking forward
much.
to your book. Yeah, it takes a lot. So thank you once again, Kaila Yu, for joining us. And I also want to thank everybody else who's been tuned in. Now, remember, we'd love to hear from you. You are our valued listeners or viewers. So if you have any suggestions on future guests or topics, do send them in. And do not forget to subscribe to our program. We are on Facebook, YouTube, X, Instagram. And Asian Pacific Voices Radio is produced by Asian Culture and Media Alliance, a nonprofit that empowers the Asian Pacific American communities with a voice through media arts. If you'd like to support us, please visit our website, acmasocal.org. Once again, I'm Rasha Goel, your host, and I hope you enjoyed this exciting conversation. Stay tuned, stay safe out there, and we'll see you on our next episode.